Welcome back to episode 3 of the Training True podcast. My beautiful wife Bethany is the host. She'll be asking the questions, I'll be giving the answers. This is nutrition part 2. Let's get after it.
Yes, so we're going to start off by talking about what are the key nutritional needs for building muscle and for losing fat. So
Okay.
I'm going to touch on those.
So the biggest thing, I think the biggest misconception that's going on with building muscle versus losing fat is people trying to do both at the same time, and that just doesn't necessarily work, okay? So what I'll say is that it can work for a short period of time. If you're a new trainee, you just started going to the gym, you can pretty much eat whatever you want and you're gonna make some physical changes because so much stimulus is coming from not doing anything to starting to train again, or to starting to train maybe in the first place, if that's the case. And so your body's gonna change on its own, basically without a big nutritional approach, for probably like the first 3 months, maybe 4 months if you're lucky, and then you're gonna have to implement a nutritional strategy depending on what your primary goal is. So in general, what I tell people is that it's good to get lean first, and this is just a reflection of the population at large, which is basically like 70% of the population is a little fluffy, a little overweight, and so they're gonna feel better immediately by getting some of that weight off. And so this is number one, let's address it from a health standpoint, let's get them lean first. But number two, for a long-term strategy, it's just better to start from a lean position in order to go into building muscle. So let's talk about what it takes to get lean first, right? Losing fat. So the biggest thing is that you need to be in a caloric deficit. So what is that? It's basically you need to be eating less calories than you burn every day. And when you do that, then your body will use the fat on your body for energy. And so what this typically looks like is I recommend that people just go to tdeecalculator.net. This is the easiest way to do it. And type in your biometrics. It's gonna ask for like age, weight, height, activity level. If you're training 3+ times in a gym, you can put that at moderate. You usually probably aren't gonna get into like heavy activity. And so just put it at moderate, and then you can estimate your body fat percentage by just doing like a simple Google search of like male or female body fat percentages and just do a visual comparison. That's gonna give you a good enough picture of where you're at. This doesn't need to be exact. And then what it's gonna spit out is what's called your TDEE. This is your total daily energy expenditure. So this is your BMR plus your NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's basically like every time we move around, we're burning calories. And BMR, you can think of as if you just lay in bed and do nothing, that's your basal metabolic rate. And so it's basal metabolic rate plus your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, plus then your activity is factored in there, like your exercise activity. And so it's gonna give you a calorie total for approximately how many calories you burn every single day based on those factors. And if you're gonna lose weight, what I suggest you do is subtract 300 to 500 calories a day from that, okay? And this is really important that it's a little bit bigger deficit than what a lot of people recommend. Some people will say do a 100 calorie day deficit or do a 200 calorie day deficit. And the problem with that is it doesn't leave a lot of cushion for life, okay? So if let's say you're doing a 100 calorie day deficit because you're trying to, like keep that deficit small, over 7 days, you're only gonna have a 700 calorie deficit, okay? So over the course of a week, you can easily accidentally blow that deficit by going out to brunch with your friends, having like some alcoholic drinks, or just like snacking throughout the week. Like that is a very small deficit over the course of a week. And so you can accidentally blow it, and then you wonder why you haven't lost any weight. Well, that's because life got in the way, just the little intricacies of life that you didn't really plan on. And so 100 is not big enough, 200 is not big enough, that's only 1,400 calories, so you can very easily blow half of your deficit, or even your full deficit if you like go down to your favorite brunch spot with a friend and you eat a nice brunch, there goes your deficit. And so this is why I recommend a little bit bigger deficit, 300 to 500 calories a day, because in that range, you're not gonna probably accidentally blow it. And so you can pretty much guarantee that you're gonna get weight loss progress during that time period if you do a 300 to 500 calorie a day deficit. The other thing is it reduces the restrictiveness of the diet, because like if you're only doing 100 to 200 calories, you really have to track everything you put in your mouth 24/7. Like you have to track everything. And most people are just not gonna do that. So for livability and just for life that gets in the way, 300 to 500 calories a day is ideal. Now let's talk about the other main kind of like factor you need to focus on, and that's protein intake. If you eat 1 gram per pound of current body weight, you're gonna be getting enough protein if you're training to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and really retain the muscle that you've built or that you already naturally have before you start training. And so 300 to 500 calorie a day deficit, eat 1 gram per pound of current body weight in protein, and then your carbs and your fats fill out the rest of the calories. Protein has 4 calories per gram of protein. So you kind of do the math on that to figure out how many calories you can get from carbs and fats. Now, you can optimize it, right? If I got into the science of like difference between carbs, difference on how it impacts your hormones, difference of protein, how it impacts your hormones, but in general, go to that calculator, tdeecalculator.net, figure out what your maintenance is, subtract 300 to 500 calories, and eat 1 gram per pound of current body weight in protein. If you're in kgs, it's 2.2 grams per kg. If you're very overweight, you're starting from like a very overweight or obese perspective, then you can typically lower the protein requirements down to about 0.5 grams per pound. And then as you get leaner, you need to bump your protein up. So that's kind of the general nutritional strategy to lose weight. And gain weight is the same thing, but in opposite. So instead of doing 300 to 500 calorie a day deficit, you're gonna do a 300 to 500 calorie a day surplus. And so you're gonna be eating more than your maintenance by 300 to 500 calories a day. Now, a lot of people are like, can I do a 100 to 200 calorie a day surplus? And what I'll say is you can easily miss a meal and then blow out your entire surplus for the week too. Just like if you ate a meal in the deficit, you can blow your surplus or blow your deficit. And so it's important to build yourself some life cushion. And it's much easier just to do a 300 to 500 calorie a day surplus or deficit to cope with the things in life that inevitably happen and guarantee either you're in muscle building or you're in fat loss. The protein requirements are the same, 1 gram per current pound of body weight, 2.2 kg per current kg of body weight. And the same thing if you're very overweight or obese. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go into caloric surplus. I really recommend you get lean first. And that's because it happens faster. You see positive changes in the mirror or on the scale week by week. And so it can start to build the habituation of eating the right things and going to the gym consistently because you have a lot of positive feedback that happens during that time. So if you're very overweight or obese, I don't recommend you bulk first or focus on building muscle first. Get lean, get healthy first. That's for everybody. Everybody always asks like, what's the general body fat percentage recommendation I should start doing this at? For women, it's like around 20%. You probably, until you get below around 20%, you probably should consider going into a surplus. And for men, it's around 15% or lower. So 20% or lower and 15% or lower. And the reason that I say this is kind of a long explanation, but the reason I say this is because building tissue takes time, right? So it's like for women, you're typically gonna put on mass at a rate of about 1 pound per month if you're doing everything right. And for men, it's about double that, 2 pounds per month. And so really the game of putting on muscle tissue so you have the look that you want is how many months can I spend in a surplus back to back to back to back? Because every time you go from a surplus to a deficit, you're changing gears and you're not in a surplus anymore, so you're not gonna continue to build muscle. And so if you can start from a lean position and then build muscle, you'll be able to do a longer caloric surplus and you'll be able to change your physique more rapidly because you'll just be comfortable with how you look during that period where you're gonna be putting on a little bit extra fluff and things like that. So long explanation, but those are the nutritional strategies. So just to summarize for you guys again, 300 to 500 calorie a day deficit or surplus depending on your goal. If you're a little overweight, start getting lean first, and a lot of that is just to build habituation, build health, feel better like about how you look, increase confidence, all those things, and you immediately get results from that are a lot faster than building muscle. And then once you get lean, then focus on building tissue via caloric surplus.
Yeah, so you're saying it's more about calories and not necessarily what you're eating, aside from like it is important to get your protein in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a hierarchy of importance. So you can think of it as like a priority list, right? Like the number one priority is hit the calorie goal, right? Because you can have less protein and hit the calorie goal and you're still gonna lose body fat if you're in deficit. Same thing to an extent is true if you're in a surplus. So calories are the most important, protein is the second most important, then comes carbs, then comes fats, etc. So don't overcomplicate it, like just try to hit your protein goal, hit your calorie goal every single day. And then the food choices, like obviously we want to be pushing you to making healthy food choices. I get that question a lot where it's like, well, can I just eat pretty much whatever? And as long as I'm within my calorie range, am I still gonna lose weight? Or am I still gonna build muscle? And the answer is yes, but my goal is to help you feel good on the inside so that you have more intensity in the gym, you perform at a higher level, and that over the long scope will improve your physique development. And so I don't necessarily recommend processed foods. I basically recommend whole foods, like foods that come as they are. So it's like one ingredients foods. It's like beef, chicken, fish, potatoes, rice, even like pasta you can get away with. Kind of like stay away from processed foods in general, and just use those as like your mainstays, basically.
Yeah. Which I asked this, and I've seen other people ask it too, of like, if I hit my calories for the day but I haven't hit my protein, should I have my protein? And you were always like, no.
Yeah, so just like that priority list we talked about, that's a great question because a lot of people ask that question. Just like that priority list, if you hit your calories for the day, cut your intake off, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're in a surplus. If you're in a surplus, the extra calories aren't going to hurt you from protein.
Yeah, I guess.
But if you're in a deficit and you're trying to lose body fat, then once you hit your calorie goal, cut yourself off. That's the number one most important thing.
Yeah.
So.
Kind of going along with that, how would someone add just muscle and not fat along with that?
So this is a really common question because nobody wants to put on fluff, right? Especially if they just got lean, they're like, well, I don't want to put this fluff back on. And here's the thing, I totally understand that desire, but that desire runs counter to what is metabolically happening. And this is usually where you're getting into the like only do a 1 to 200 calorie a day surplus because they're trying to limit the amount of fat gain you put on. Here's the truth. No matter how big of a caloric surplus you're in, you're going to put on some fluff because the body can't just simply direct mass to muscle tissue. It's going to store it where it will. And so what I say, instead of like trying to stay ultra lean while you're putting on tissue, just shift your frame of mind, okay? So it's like when you're getting lean, yes, the goal is to get lean, reveal your muscles, like maintain a lean state, etc. But when you're putting on tissue, the goal is to maximize the amount of muscle tissue that you can put on. And so with that is going to come a little bit of extra fluff, right? A little bit extra body fat, but that's totally okay because the goal right now is to maximize muscle tissue gain. And so what I think happens to a lot of people, and this is why you see that people look the same in the gym year after year after year after year, is that they're so concerned with putting on body fat that they don't maintain a surplus for long enough because they're putting, maybe their abs get a little less defined or whatever. And so they never string together enough months in a surplus to reach the size or the physique or the glute size or whatever it is, male or female, that you're after. And so what I'll say is like, don't worry about the fluff, like that will come off very easily. And that's part of why I have people get lean first because they can see, oh, this will come off pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so don't worry about the fluff. Like you're going to put on some fluff, you're going to put on some body fat. That's totally okay because remember the mindset is the goal is to maximize muscle building. And so I'm always in the game of like, how can I get people to their end goal as fast as possible, right? Because we live in a Western society. It's like, we don't want to wait on the microwave. Like we don't want to wait on a movie to come out. It's like we have Netflix, you know what I mean? And so it's like the goal is to do it as efficiently as possible. And the best way to do that is the way that I'm saying as far as efficiency goes. And I know there'll be people like, well, I'll be patient and I'll do all this, but the problem is you don't see enough change. And so you get demotivated. And so don't worry about the fluff. It will come off afterwards. The general cycle is like get lean, focus on building muscle. You're going to put on a little bit of fat with that and then get lean again. And that will keep, and if you follow the nutritional strategies from the deficit that I described, you will retain the muscle that you have built. And so by the end of those kind of like 3 cycles, you're going to have an entirely different physique. So
yeah, which makes sense. Okay, now we're going to answer kind of like a string of like protein questions because there seems to be a lot of those. Like everybody has a billion of them. But if protein builds muscles, why can't I just eat more protein and then therein equal more muscles?
Yeah, so I do get this question quite a bit. Because what the inner desire is like, I want to just eat more protein, but be in a caloric deficit, so lose fat and build muscle again. So we're going back to that same desire. Here's the thing, like protein does increase muscle protein synthesis, which you can think of as like, it increases your propensity to build tissue, your propensity to build muscle tissue. But you still have to have an excess of calories, more than what your maintenance is, in order to protect that protein that you take in, because protein isn't just used for building muscle tissue. It can also go through this process called gluconeogenesis, where it's like you take in protein, and let's say you're in a deficit, and so since you're in a deficit, your body's going to tap into that protein that you eat and convert it to glucose, so that it can be used for energy. And glucose is a carb, basically. It's like a simple carb. And so because of that, your body's not going to efficiently put on tissue. Like you have to have a surplus to protect the protein, because your body burns fuel in this order. It prefers to burn carbs first, and so it's going to use up carb stores, and then it's going to use up fat stores, and then it's going to use up protein. And so if you don't have the carbs or the fat because you're in a deficit, you're not protecting that protein layer that you're taking in to build tissue. And the other thing that is true is like, you can't build something from nothing. Like you guys hear me say this all the time, like it's the law of conservation of mass. Like we can't have this table with build a table, right? The table is muscle tissue, without having the raw wood first. Well, the raw wood is calories and it's macros, right? So carbs, fats, and proteins. You have to have it in excess of those, just like we have to have an excess of wood to build the table. And the same thing is true for your body. Like you just can't do that long term. Your body's smarter than that. It adapts faster than that. And so it's just going to take that protein and convert it to glucose for energy if you're in a deficit. So you need the additional calories, the additional mass, right? Like the raw wood to build the tissue. There's just no way around it. Like your body is so finely tuned and so finely balanced that it's going to, it's not going to work the other way, basically.
Yeah, which I think that's a good analogy for people like me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But how much protein should you have before bed?
Yeah.
That's
So,
question.
In an ideal world, right, and none of us live in an ideal world, or not many of us live in an ideal world. Basically what the research says is you should have protein every 2 to 3 hours, some form of protein. And what that will do is every time you ingest protein, it increases muscle protein synthesis, which, like I said, the kind of basic understanding of that is it improves your potential to build muscle tissue. And so if you're increasing that every 2 to 3 hours, you're maximizing your potential to build muscle tissue. And so however that falls, like whether or not that's before bed or in the middle of the day or whatever, it really doesn't matter. You kind of want to take like your total day. So most people are awake for 15 hours, right? And let's say you eat 5 meals, that means you're going to eat a meal every 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so you just want to eat meals in consistent frequency. And if you do want to take protein before bed to get you through the fast, you can absolutely do that. A lot of people try to eat like a casein protein. I don't necessarily recommend that because there's quite a few studies that indicated that led to like colorectal cancer. I don't know why that specific protein, I don't remember. And it may be a very marginal increase, but for me, it's like, I don't want that increase. And so what I'd recommend is you have even just like a whey isolate with some fat, because fat slows down your digestion. So if you have the isolate plus some fat, it will slow down the breakdown of that whey isolate so that you can get longer in your sleep cycle while still digesting protein. Alternatively, you can just have a whole food source. Like, can you have some steak before bed? Can you have some beef before bed? Like, I know that's not as easy. Yeah, that's not as easy, but like that takes a lot longer to break down, so you'll stay anabolic, basically in a building state for longer periods of time. Or you can do like a cottage cheese. Cottage cheese
I was
has
gonna say maybe some cottage cheese
has
would
a
be more
yeah,
realistic.
has casein protein in it, but because of its form, it's not just like powdered. It doesn't have the same increase in colorectal cancer. And so you can do like cottage cheese with maybe some peanut butter in there, and that will really slow down the digestive process. That may sound gross, but maybe you can have cottage cheese and peanut butter.
That is
Basically, you
gross.
want to get protein with a fat. That's kind of the simple thing to like think about it.
Yeah, so maybe come up with some different meal ideas besides peanut butter and cottage cheese together, but you get the idea.
Yeah, yeah. Cottage cheese. The reason I say cottage cheese is because it is like a long digesting protein. So beef, cottage cheese, any sort of like meat is going to be good. Cottage cheese is good. You can do Greek yogurt, whatever. Just get a protein source to simplify. Get a protein source and mix it with the fat. That's the simplest way to do it.
Which kind of leads into the next question. If I haven't hit my protein goals by the end of the day, should I have like a shake to meet that, or just call it a day?
Depends on where you're at with your calories, kind of in relation to that other question. If you're in a deficit, you fit your caloric goal, no. If you're either in a caloric deficit and you haven't hit your calorie goal, or in a surplus, yes, you should. Yeah, that's kind of like that's just a simple answer. Yes, you should.
Okay, and I know we kind of touched on this of like, if more protein or protein builds muscle, then why can't I just pound the protein? But if you eat more than like 1 gram of protein per body weight, is there really any benefit of that?
There is benefit per the research, like in some aspects. Okay, so it's pretty hazy on whether like you get above 1 gram per pound if you build more muscle tissue. But what you can think of is like, as you get above 1 gram per pound, you burn more calories from that protein, because protein, to digest it, 30% of the calories in the protein itself is just used for digestion. So if you eat 100 calories of the protein, 30 calories of those is just used in the digestion of the protein. And so what they have shown is that like, if you eat a higher protein diet, you can ultimately burn more fat. Number one, it's keeping you satiated longer, so you're probably not going to eat as many other like food sources like carbs and fats. Number two, that thermogenic effect is pretty powerful, and so you can also use that as like a nutritional tactic if you want to. A lot of people ask like, can I eat too much protein? I'm like, most of the time your stomach is going to stop you before you eat too much protein. Like even getting up to like 2 grams per pound. Is there like benefits? Yeah, there's thermogenic benefits. Is there muscle building benefits? Not per what the research says, although there are a lot of guys who have gone up to 2 grams per pound and they're like, I did build muscle more effectively. And so you can try it if you want, but I mean, 2 grams per pound is like, if I'm 200 pounds, that's 4 pounds of meat a day.
Yeah, good luck.
And so you're eating like, you know, a pound of meat over 4 meals, or 3/4 of a pound over 5 or 6 meals. And so that's quite a bit of protein. And so usually it's like, what's going to stop you before that is like your stomach, right? You just can't digest that much food. And so for a general rule, it's like you can't really get too much protein. And I know there's some concerns about roughness on kidneys and things like that. As long as you don't have a pre-existing condition, you're totally safe to do that. There's obviously carnivores out here who have eaten just protein, mass amounts of it for 30 years, and they're not having kidney issues. In fact, all of their blood work is improved. That's not like a plug for carnivore as a nutritional strategy, but they are an evidence base that you can look at. And so I don't really believe that you can get too much protein, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. What are the impacts of like carbs versus fat versus protein?
Yeah. So this is kind of like where you're getting down into like more of like what's happening, the internal mechanisms that are happening when you're eating. So let's start with carbs. Okay. So the biggest thing that happens when you eat carbs is you release insulin. And you can think of insulin as a shuttle. Basically, it shuttles nutrients around your body. So you eat a carb, your body squirts out some insulin from your pancreas, and it basically acts as a shuttle. So you got insulin, it'll take carbs, it'll take fats, it'll take proteins, and it's like they get on this insulin bus and it takes them to tissue. And so the benefit of eating carbs, especially if you're in a surplus, is insulin is very anabolic, meaning it will add to you, okay? And so carbs, like eating a high amount of carbs during a bulk, is a really good strategy because you get an equal amount of insulin release each time you eat carbs. And so you kind of have like this linear relationship, and you want that because that insulin is so anabolic. It's more anabolic than testosterone, it's more anabolic than any other hormone in your body. And when you're trying to build tissue, anabolism is what you want. That is tissue building. Now, you will store a little bit of fat as part of anabolism too, but in general, if you can maximize insulin output, you can maximize muscle building. So that's kind of carbs. The other interesting thing that carbs do is if you eat starchy carbs, which would be like potatoes, even rice, things like that, you will also get like leptin output, and leptin is your primary fat burning hormone. And so a lot of people are avoiding carbs on a diet, and then they hit this plateau. And when you feed them a lot of carbs, like maybe 2 or 3 grams per current pound of body weight, the next 3 days they'll immediately break that plateau because they're getting a big squirt of leptin release. And so it releases leptin, and it also releases insulin, and those two are really powerful hormones. In fact, probably the most powerful hormones. Now let's talk about fats. A lot of people are scared of fats because they've heard like the news, and like saturated fat is bad and cholesterol is bad. All of that has been completely debunked. Saturated fat and cholesterol are the 2 substrates that you build hormones from. And so I've had quite a few women clients coming to me where their coach, or they have themselves on like 30 grams of fat a day, and then they wonder why they feel like crap. Well, that's not very much fat to build hormones off of, and so you're degrading your hormone levels by having ultra low fats. My gosh, got a hiccup. Ultra low fats. And so you want to keep your fats in a moderate range. And so what that typically is somewhere between, I wouldn't go below 50 grams a day. So somewhere between 50 and 100 grams, but it depends on your biometrics, your TDEE, all of that. I would not go below 50. That seems to be like when people tend to feel kind of crappy, and this is anecdotal based on coaching and like just working with people, because they are the substrate from which hormones are developed. So especially cholesterol, and everybody's been told like, don't eat cholesterol because cholesterol contributes to blood level cholesterol, but they found that is not a true link. That's not actually true. And so whole eggs, for example, have a lot of cholesterol in them, and a lot of people don't eat whole eggs because they're like, it's high in cholesterol, but what they're missing out on is the hormonal benefits of having some cholesterol. And so if you're struggling with hormonal issues, one of the biggest things you can do is increase your fat intake. And as you do that, your body will be able to synthesize more hormones from that increased fat intake. So now we've covered carbs, covered fats, and we've kind of covered protein already, but the primary mechanism is protein. You have all sorts of proteins in your body, and they all have different shapes, and the shape determines their function, basically. So I'll use like an easy to understand one, like collagen, for example. It has a specific protein shape, and that specific protein shape fits into receptors that build skin, nails, hair, things like that. It doesn't contribute to like muscle protein synthesis, and if it does, it's a very small amount. Whereas like a protein like a whey isolate or meat or eggs or even like a tofu or tempeh, like a complete protein like that, it has a shape that attaches to receptors like in your muscles, for example. And so then you can build muscle tissue from that type of protein. So the primary benefit that people think of as protein is obviously number one, muscle building, but there's different types, right? So I just want to kind of clear that up because I get that question. Muscle building is number one, increasing protein synthesis through the ingestion of protein, and consistent is best, right? 2-3 hours. And then the thermogenic effect of protein. So when you eat a higher protein diet, you burn so many of those calories just from digestion that they're kind of like free calories, if you will.
Yeah, when you like told me that about like, I don't know, the proteins having different shapes, that like blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, you're like a freaking genius.
Yeah, that's biology 101,
like,
by the way.
What?
Yeah, so the shape determines the function. So like some antibodies and stuff are proteins, and they have a specific shape, and that determines the function, right?
Yeah.
So they'll kill viruses and things. So shape determines function, and that's why you can't take like a collagen supplement and expect like big muscles.
Yeah,
it
that like
doesn't
really
function
annoyed
that
me.
way. Yeah.
Like, I needed those 10 grams of collagen protein to go towards my daily intake.
Hey, I get it.
And you also said like, this one is just like something I find interesting, that like you said, if you have beans, you have to have like rice with it.
Yeah, so like if you get protein primarily from plants, like most plants in and of themselves, other than like soy and gluten, soy and gluten are the 2 biggest ones, aren't a complete protein on their own. And so they're a partial protein and a partial protein. And so a complete protein is the correct chain of like amino acids, and you can think of amino acids as like chain links in a chain link like chain. It's like they all link together, right? So they link together and you have the chain, and that's the protein. Now if you take the links off, then you have amino acids. And so most plants don't have all of the right chains, that if you ingest it, that it's a complete protein where your body will use it for muscle protein synthesis. So you have to pair them. So a common example is if you pair rice, it's an incomplete protein, and if you pair beans, that's an incomplete protein. But when you pair them together, you get a complete protein, and that can be used effectively for muscle protein synthesis, just like meat. Now, there's some arguments on like bioavailability, which is like how much of that is usable, because a complete protein has certain amounts of amino acids. Without getting like too deep, it's like has X amount of this and X amount of this and X amount of this and X amount of this, and it goes to the lowest denominator. So it's like plants have less of certain amino acids. So even if you eat 100 grams of protein, complete protein in plants, it's not the same amino acid like amounts like a meat protein is, and so it's less usable basically. And so this is part of the reason why vegans tend to struggle with getting in enough protein. Even if they, on paper, are eating enough, it's not as usable. So.
You're such a genius,
Thank
babe.
you.
You touched on this a little bit when you talked about carbs, but if someone's in a plateau, how can they break that?
Yeah, so literally the easiest thing you can do if you're in a weight loss plateau specifically is increase your carb intake for like a day. So it's like, let's say you've been dieting for 4 weeks and all of a sudden like the scale's not moving, your measurements aren't moving. For one day, eat 2 to 3 grams of carbs per pound of body weight, pull down your protein intake a bit, like to maybe 0.5 gram per pound, and you can leave the fats the same. So you're eating like around maintenance, maybe a little above maintenance. And what that will do is just squirt out a bunch of leptin, and your body will recognize that fat burning hormone, and it will start stripping fat again. And so that's like a really easy like way that you can break like a fat loss plateau. It's called a refeed day. That's what I call it. It's like you're refeeding protein to release leptin, so that after that refeed day, the next 2 or 3 days, like clockwork, you'll lose 1 to 2 pounds, and then your body will kind of kickstart losing fat again. You don't need to do them every week. That's a common question. It's like, how often should I do a refeed day? Do it when you plateau, right? So if your weight loss really slows down, you lost like 0.2 pounds rather than a pound or something like that, then that might be indication, okay, I'm gonna do a refeed day this week. Or you have a couple weeks strung together like that. So you kind of want to like, you have to be realistic with yourself and your tracking and all that. Like you can't be mistracking and then like, well, I'm just gonna have a refeed day.
Yeah.
You need to be tracking effectively. And then if you hit that plateau, have a refeed day. Now, if you're on a bulk or like you're trying to build muscle, you're in a surplus, typically what's happening is you've met up, your maintenance has increased to the bulk amount of calories that you're eating. And so as you put on size, because there's more of you require more calories. And so you just need to increase your calorie intake. So you can start by increasing by like 100 calories or 200 calories a day over the course of a week and see if that moves you up. The other thing that can potentially happen is maybe you're becoming a little bit insulin resistant, where that insulin is not affecting you. It's not transporting those nutrients as efficiently as it should. In that case, it's better to do the opposite, which is like you're going to do a fast for a day. You're going to do a fast, you're going to incorporate cardio, you're going to do things to get yourself re-insulin sensitized, or maybe you do like a surplus break of a week where you're just going to eat at maintenance or something like that. The fastest way to do it is just to fast for like 24, 48 hours. And you don't have to like train if you don't want to. Maybe just go for some walks and things like that, and that really rapidly gets you insulin sensitive again.
Yeah, which I also think that's super fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like how the body makes adjustments so fast. That's why I always say like you can't like trick it very much. Like it's just like so fast and so on because it's maintaining really tight parameters at a cellular level that if it gets wonky out of that parameter, then you can go through cell death and cause cellular problems. And so its design is to be really tight. And so you can't like trick it. And so you have to implement strategies that work with what your body naturally does.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. It's true. What to eat before and after a workout? Everyone always wants this like magic food to eat.
100% they do. I know that like the Rice Krispies thing is really big right now. Honey and salt is really big right now.
What?
Yeah.
It was like eating honey off a spoon with some salt?
Yes, yeah. And so basically like all that is, when you break it down, is you're getting an increase in carbs and an increase in salt, okay? And carbs and salt go together, like they get transported together with water. And so that's why like when you have a Rice Krispie or you have honey and salt, you might have a better pump or you might have a little bit more energy because you're getting that fast acting carb in your system right before your workout so you can go work out. But that's not necessarily what I recommend to do. Like you shouldn't be having 10 little Rice Krispies before you work out. Instead, what I recommend you do is you just work out between your 2 meals. Like so have a meal 1 to 2 hours before, have a meal 1 to 2 hours after. And if you want to get a little bit more savvy, then you could do intra-workout nutrition, which is like what I do, which is you'll do like dextrose or cyclic dextrin powder, maybe like anywhere from 25 to 50 grams of that in a drink. with some EAAs, not BCAAs. It's EAAs, essential amino acids. That's really important because EAAs are a complete protein. They have all the amino acids in the right amounts in order to be usable as a protein source immediately. But they're faster digesting than just like a meat or something like that, or even like a whey isolate. So 25 to 50 grams of dextrocyclic dextrin with 10 to 20 grams of EAAs, and you can put some salt in there if you want as a volumizing agent, so you'll notice you have better pumps off of it. So that's like one thing you can do intra-workout, or just a general pre-workout meal if like you're kind of hungry before your workout that I recommend is have like a banana with some peanut butter, because you're getting the salt from the peanut butter, you're getting a little bit of fat, and you're getting some fast-acting carbohydrates in the form of the banana, and so you can do that. That would be healthier than having Rice Krispies or like a Pop-Tart or something like that. And then post-workout, just have another meal. Like there is no, the anabolic window has been crushed. Like that myth is, it's a myth, it's not true. So you don't need that protein directly after your workout. Like as soon as you get down to the gym, you're like slamming a protein shake. That's not real. It doesn't help increase your gains. Like you just need to have protein within 1 to 2 hours after a workout, and you're gonna be completely fine. So as a general basis, have a meal 1 to 2 hours before and 1 to 2 hours after. If you want to do intra-workout, you can do that. And the benefit of that is you're combating catabolism, which is like a breaking down effect while you're working out. So you kind of think of it as like, I'm starting the recovery process as I'm working out. And then if you really want like something before your workout, you can have like a banana and peanut butter. Basically, it's like a fast carb with some salty fat.
Yeah, I was like destroying a banana and peanut butter for like a solid month before my workout. Like I just was craving it so bad. Yeah. And I loved it. It was great.
And some people are like her where they're really like food sensitive, meaning like they can really drop off like a blood glucose level pretty fast. Yeah. And so they need that, right? Like I don't necessarily have that problem. But for people who need it, pick something healthier than a Rice Krispie, pick something healthier than a Pop-Tart. And typically honey and salt is not enough nutrition to get you through.
I can't believe that's a thing now.
It's super, it's like people are asking me about that like crazy. You can absolutely do it. There's worse things you can eat than honey and salt. But a lot of this is just faddish stuff that influencers are creating in order to get attention. So the real is the meal before, meal after, do some intra-workout nutrition. If you really need some energy before, banana and banana and peanut butter is totally fine.
And go just drizzle your honey on top of there.
That's true.
What I did.
You can do that too. Yep. Yeah. For some extra carbs.
Next question is if on the days I'm working out, do I need to have more calories than on the days I'm not working out?
Yeah, a lot of people try to like, this is kind of trying to gamify it again, like kind of trick your body. Yeah. Where it's like, well, what if I eat less calories on the day that I don't work out, in order to try to reduce fat gain or in order to speed up my fat loss? And here's what I'll say, like, the more like complex you make it, the harder it is to identify where you're failing. Okay, so it's like, let's say one day, you work out 3 days a week and you eat 2,500 calories, and then the other 4 days a week you eat 2,000 calories. Like that's kind of hard to figure out, like what days do I need to increase or decrease depending on what's happening with me. And so just simplify it. Like it doesn't have to be so dang complicated. And I know there's a lot of influencers and a lot of people out there like hyper complicating and optimizing all this stuff. But the thing is like the more complicated you make it, the harder it is to determine what you need to change. So keep it simple. And so what I tell people is just eat the same calories all week, right? Yeah. Whether you're working out or you're not working out. And then if you don't lose weight, you know what to do. If you don't gain weight, you know what to do depending on what your goal is. It just reduces the amount of like considerations that you have to make. And so eat the same things. Just eat the same things. Stop buying into the complex hype. Like really training and changing your body is about doing the same things consistently over time, right? And all these optimizing debates and all these Rice Krispies and like all of these things are trying to overcomplicate it so that you feel overwhelmed, so that you exchange money with them in order to get a plan. That's all it is. Like changing your physique is pretty simple. Like it just is, even from a nutritional aspect. It's like eat the same things, do it consistently, go to the gym, have a progressive training plan, like make sure you're pushing yourself, operate in the right sets and reps, which we talked about in video 1. Do those things and do them consistently, do them over and over again, and you will get progress, and then know how to make the adaptations when you need to. It's literally that simple.
Yeah, people just be wilding out.
Oh my gosh. That's not optimal. This isn't optimal.
Yeah.
Optimize this, optimize this. Someone said this, someone said that. It's like, literally, if you just look at the literature, it's very clear. And even if you take the literature out and you just look at what the pros are doing, very clear. Yeah. They're slowly increasing calories on a bulk. They're slowly decreasing calories on a cut. They're operating by a progressive training plan where they're trying to get stronger week after week after week, or increasing volume week after week after week. And they're just doing that consistently, right? And that's training. That's physique change. It's just that simple.
Yeah. when should someone have a cheat day, or like when are cheat days okay?
Yeah, I don't usually recommend full cheat days because people tend to go a little buck wild on those.
Yeah.
Like they tend to like go way out, and so
100%.
like if you're in a deficit and you want to have a cheat day, the problem is that like you can blow your whole deficit for the week by having a cheat day if you're not careful. Especially if you like have a pretty big appetite, you've been craving pizza, you've been craving burgers, you've been whatever, and you dedicate a whole day to it, you're probably going to blow your deficit out, and that whole week's work is wasted. And so instead, I recommend if you really want to cheat, do it via refeed. That's the best case scenario, right? It's like higher carb, lower protein. Eat similar foods like rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, pasta. Eat similar foods. That's the best way to do it. If you need a little bit of relief, like some
It's
diet
not
relief,
really a cheat day, babe.
yeah. I'm getting to that. The second best thing that you can do is you can have a cheat meal. So it's like maybe you go out for sushi, right? Or maybe you go out for a burger, or maybe you go out for pizza, right? But it's just one meal. It's not the entire day you're dedicating to cheating, because you still want that week to count for something. Like you don't want to do all that work all week, tracking your foods, making your meals, going to the gym, just to blow it out in one day. Like you want consistent weeks, week after week after week, where you're in a deficit or in a surplus.
Also, like, I feel like I can't stress this enough. There are so many other options. Like, if you want a burger, there's a way to make a burger that doesn't have, like, the caloric density that going to McDonald's or, like, somewhere else does. Or if you want pizza, like, there's just so many other options that you can just take down your calories in it, but still also kind of, like, feed that craving.
Yeah, like we do pita pizzas or something like that. If we're feeling like pizza.
Really feeling crazy, get that cauliflower crust out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he refuses to eat it.
So is rice cauliflower. I will not eat that. That's garbage. But if you like it and it keeps your calories down, go ahead.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't like it. But the same thing with burgers. Like get lean burgers, right? Like make burgers at home, right? Like use natural ingredients and make them at home so that they're healthier and you still get that kind of like cheat meal feeling. So I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And now last question, which is my favorite one. What are some good snacks for people to eat?
Yeah. So usually what I say is like if you're a snacker and you like to snack, try to pick protein snacks. Like try to pick snacks that are based around protein because that's probably the hardest macronutrient for people to hit consistently. And so you can do like Greek yogurt, you can do beef jerky, you can do cottage cheese. You can do a low-calorie snack like pickles or something like that. I do that all the time when I'm in a deficit because I'm just trying to get something in my stomach. That makes me feel fuller or whatever, but still pretty tasty. You can do like salads with like a vinaigrette dressing.
It's not really snack.
It's not super snacky, but if you need to get something in that's like get either protein in or get a low-calorie food in.
Yeah.
If you're in a deficit, right? If you're in a surplus, like you should be eating all the food anyway. And so if you're in deficit, those are the things I recommend that are probably like the easiest. Greek yogurt, lean or like low-fat cottage cheese, and then beef jerky. So
yeah.
Do you have any others that like?
I don't know. I think I flip-flop between like beef jerky, beef sticks, like low-fat cheese sticks.
Cheese sticks are a good one. Yep.
I'm a fruit addict, so like I'll eat berries, but when I'm trying not to like. If I feel like I've eaten enough berries for the day, I like freeze-dried strawberries a lot. Those are pretty low in calories. And then you can get the little Greek yogurts, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the oikos.
Yeah. IKOS.
Yeah. Those ones don't have any like sugar in it at all.
Yeah, like
I think
the 000 ones.
Yeah, the 000. I think a lot of people know about those.
Yeah.
But I usually have those every day. And then I love the little pickles in the little bag, that you can take on the go. Like I take those for lunches a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can orient if you're in deficit towards protein or a low calorie snack that's easy, that's what I'd recommend. But primarily protein, because it's so hard for people to hit their protein goals. Or you can have a protein shake even. You can have just whey isolate shake. That's pretty easy. You get your protein goal in, it'll satiate you for a little while. I'm not a huge snack person unless it's garbage snacks, I'm having chips or something.
Yeah.
And so for healthy snacks, if I'm on diet, I'm just eating meals. That's what I'm doing. And
I know. I always laugh whenever anyone's like, "Oh, what's a good snack?" And he's like, I don't know. I don't really snack." I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So those are the snacks that we'll recommend. But yeah, I'm not a snacker. I don't eat a lot of snacks. I just have meals. So that's where I push people in general. Because people can get a little out of control with the snacking.
I mean, if you do struggle with that, you need to really watch yourself. But people, for me, I have to eat more often than a meal. A meal does not hold me over for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true. So aim for the protein.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's all the nutritional questions
Okay,
from
so
everyone.
that's the end of part 2 for nutrition. If you guys have further nutrition questions, put them in the comments, message me on TikTok, message me on Instagram, something like that. Maybe we can do like another episode later down the road. So this concludes episode 3. We'll put out episode 4. It won't be on nutrition this time. We'll pick a different topic. As always, like follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, follow me on YouTube and all that. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Like, do all that stuff. Spread the word. Like, if you find this helpful and you have friends that are like trying to get into fitness or whatever, spread the word. I go live pretty consistently on TikTok between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you have questions, that's the time to get them answered. I just answer all questions. And so you can catch me on that. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.